Welcome, everyone. It is Tuesday, July 9th, and the time is 6 p.m., and the Board of AD County Commissioners are in session to have a hearing on foregone taxes. I'll call the meeting to order. We have Commissioner Visser present with us. We have Commissioner Laciando as well present. We have an announcement before we get started here. If there's anyone here for the drug court graduation, it is actually on the 4th floor. It's not here, okay?
Courtroom 400. Courtroom 400.
Courtroom 400, 4th floor. All right. Any changes to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
No, ma'am.
Okay. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing then. And we're going to be taking up new business, and it is the consideration of using $5,563,093 in foregone in FY20 budget for design costs associated with the new county coroner's office, design costs associated with the new jail pod for the Ada County Sheriff's Office, acquisition of real property for the expansion of the Ada County Jail and public safety facilities, and/or a second driver's license location for the Ada County Sheriff. So those are the items we'll be taking up tonight, and the order that we're going to have them present, we're going to start with Kathleen Graves in the clerk's office. She's the Ada County Controller, will present a brief overview of foregone for us, and she'll begin. And then Mita Cooper, our Ada County Strategic Planning Manager, will then do a brief overview of the projects themselves that have come out of the Master Facility Plan. And then that will be followed by Coroner Dottie Owens, and she will present her project for up to 20 minutes, followed by the Sheriff Stephen Bartlett, who will present on his projects, and that will be another 20 minutes. And at conclusion of those projects, we will be asking questions along the way. And then after the conclusion of the Sheriff's project, we'll open it up for public comment. So if you'd like to testify and you have not already filled out a form, there's some forms in the back, and there's also some forms up here at the podium. So make sure that you fill those out. We'll allow everyone 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes to testify. So when you come forward, when it's that time, I'll remind you again. Just state your name for the record when you come up and speak into the microphone, but you do not need to, we're streaming live, so you do not need to, and please do not state your address. Okay, thank you. All right, emails, or not emails, but cell phones turned off and silenced, please. All right, excellent. We're going to start then with Ms. Kathleen Graves. Come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Ada County currently has $12,574,557 in foregone. For the FY20 budget, as you mentioned, $5,563,093 of foregone is being considered for the following projects. $1,760,600 for design costs associated with the new coroner's office, $3,113,700 for design costs associated with a new jail pod for the sheriff's office, $1 million for acquisition of real property for jail and public safety facilities, $505,290 for a second driver's license location. If all 4 projects are approved, we would also be using $816,487 of fund balance to support those projects. The increase for a homeowner with a home of $240,000 of taxable value would be $24.27 for the year. I'd like to, if there are no questions, I'd like to now turn it over to Mita Cooper, your Strategic Planning Manager and Development Services, to discuss further the Master Facilities Plan implementation using foregone taxes.
Okay, will you stand for questions, just in case we have any questions at this time? Any questions? Ms. Graves?
Just a quick clarification. When you said the $240,000 of taxable value, that's taking into account the homeowner's exemption?
Correct.
Okay, so
Correct.
we're looking at a median home value of $340,000.
40, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And the fund balance, again, was $816,487.
$816,487.
Great, okay, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, Ms. Cooper? Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. First of all, thank you for considering implementation of Master Facilities Plan in this foregone hearing.
Speak into the microphone a little bit more. There you go.
Thank you for considering implementation of Master Facilities Plan in this foregone hearing. In today's hearing, you are considering 4 of the Master Facilities Plan recommendations. But before I go into each one of them, I want to share some highlights of what I learned about Ada County in the process of managing the Master Facilities Plan. And I want to share these because many people in the audience and you may not know about these accomplishments of Ada County that is worth sharing today. So of course, everybody is familiar with the fact that state code dictates what you can and cannot do in Ada County. But what we really do not understand is how far the breadth of this statement goes. What I learned is most of the services that we provide is actually provided to not only unincorporated Ada County residents, but all residents, including fail to recognize some of these things. Our coroner actually serves practically entire state of Idaho when it comes to forensic services. 33 counties of the 44 in state of Idaho are served by our coroner's office. And my most favorite one, Director Burns and her staff has done such a wonderful job in juvenile services and programs that the juvenile detention capacity has decreased actually over the course of last couple of decades. And that's a huge achievement in my mind for our kids. And what was surprising to me when I was working on the Master Facilities Plan as a taxpayer of Ada County was only 1/4 of my taxpayer dollars was going to Ada County's general governance. Less than 1/4 of my taxpayers' dollars were going to general governance. And that governance actually includes you managing the county, of course, but also 6 other elected offices: clerk of the court, coroner, prosecutor, sheriff, and treasurer. In addition to that, you had 11 departments when we worked on the master facilities plan and directors that help you manage the county on day-to-day basis. When we did the master facilities plan, we had 1,826 employees. That number is definitely higher as of today. But at that time, we had 1,826 employees. And our county facilities and services are located in 32 locations throughout Ada County, which was very surprising when we started doing the inventory for master facilities plan. Also, we occupy more than 1.2 million square feet of office space to serve the residents of all these county. So of course, when we are running a large enterprise like Ada County, our facilities are going to need to expand constantly and improved to keep up with the technology and other issues like that. Also, to keep up with the growth that the Treasure Valley region has seen is quite challenging. So in 2005 was the first time that we had recognized that we needed to move all the administrative functions of the county out of this building and use this building in full capacity as a fully functioning courthouse. Subsequently, Sheriff's Office also had a master plan for the jail expansion in 2004 that got upgraded in 2009, and that is the most robust document that they had developed in terms of capacity expansion and other things. Juvenile master plan, of course, Director Burns actually has juvenile programs at Benjamin location, and her main detention and other courts functions are in the Denton facility. So they needed to come together at the main location and make sure that there is more efficient services provided to the county kids. And in 2015, Coroner Dottie Owens recognized that she needed to move out of the existing facility because that was built in 1966 as a warehouse. and we had just converted haphazard, to make it work for her, but they were also reaching a point where they were not able to hire a single more employee as a result of the capacity issue in that building. In summary, these 4 projects required more than $200 million of capital investment, which was a quite overwhelming task for the boards at the time. And therefore, not a lot of things happened on the implementation of this collectively. But what was also recognized was if these 4 functions needed expansion, what else was needed for Ada County? And so in 2017 and 18, the county leaders engaged in the master facilities plan to see how we can continue to provide services to Ada County existing residents as well as the future residents of 2040. And we worked with every leader and every official in the county to identify every single operation of Ada County and looked at all the locations and saw where we can build more cost efficiently in the future. And so the master facilities plan came up with this list of priorities, and leadership team worked on identifying what were the top priorities of Ada County that they need to engage in implementing immediately. And as you can see in this slide, the collective total is $317 million plus in 2018 dollars. And so again, Madam Chair, it's an overwhelming task, I fully recognize, and I want to compliment this board for even considering that today. So I want to talk about the first priority projects, which the leadership, when we worked on the master facilities plan, felt that needed to be implemented immediately. Of course, Coroner's facility was one of the top 3 ranked projects with the total program level cost of $18.9 million. The second highest priority project was the public safety building jail expansion through addition of Pod E and CCU upgrade with the program level cost of $22.3 million, and the courthouse complex admin building and parking garage 450 spaces with the total program level cost of $65.2 million. In today's hearing, you're considering 2 of these for implementation, and I'm going to go down each one of them in the next few slides. Ooh, I did it again. Did not click. So the first priority project that I want to talk about today is the coroner's facility. As I mentioned, there was never a standalone facility for coroner. We put her in a warehouse and made it work, which is also aging. And if you have visited that facility as an architect, it was offensive to see that people have to work here. In March 2019, you recognized that this is a dire need of Ada County, and you have created a construction fund for acquisition of a site for this new coroner's facility, which would require approximately 2 to 5 acre site for us to purchase. And then we'll need to build 25,000 to 35,000 square feet building on it. So the master facilities plan has assumed that the coroner's design cost will be around $1.760600, which is the 10% of the project cost that was anticipated. Madam Chair, some of these assumptions, as I mentioned before, master facilities plan is a program level assumption. So as we do the design level work, we would be able to identify a lot more specifications on how we can ensure that the safety and security of the employees are taken care of, as well as the decency of our deceased is taken care of in the design. So that is the design cost, and you will need a specialized firm that understands the nuances of coroner's operation to do this work. The next project that I want to talk about is the Pod E addition and CCU upgrade. Madam Chair, the sheriff is going to talk about the need for this, but we have read a lot of newspaper articles about how the jail is at capacity, and the existing 4 pods that we have are not adequate, and we need a new pod to make sure that we can expand the jail population with the growth that is occurring in Ada County. So what Master Facilities Plan has recommended is addition of jail pod E with 250 jail beds and 36,000 square feet of CCU needs to be upgraded when we go through that addition. So this is one of the first project of the overall PSB complex. Of course, as soon as we'll do one pod E addition, you'll run out of space for parking and you'll need additional projects to continue building the public safety complex in a more operationally functional way. So the pod E addition and CCU upgrade design cost is around $3 million, which is listed on this slide, which is 15% of the project cost, because I do believe that this project will require a lot more careful planning because of the 1,000+ inmates that are currently residing at this location. So pod E, as you can see, is in the corner, is where the master facilities plan has envisioned. But as we go through the design work, we will be able to reconsider this and look at it more carefully if that's the most optimal site for pod E or not. And then the CCU upgrades at the center of the jail. So in addition to the pod E and CCU upgrades, Sheriff's Office also has a couple of other needs which were recognized in the Master Facilities Plan. That one is the public safety complex, as I mentioned, would need to be expanded to accommodate a more functional layout of the overall complex. And that cost is around $1 million. And the second driver's location would need to be leased and then remodeled, and that cost is around $505,000. So as I mentioned, the master facilities plan, pod E is number 1 on this slide, but has a subsequent series of projects that PSB Complex will need to go through in order to make sure that we are able to serve the 2040 population in a most efficient manner. And so the purchase of the property that Sheriff has requested is one of those essential pieces to have in order for us to make that happen. And then I think a lot of us can relate to this picture. We have waited for long lines to get a driver's license registered, and Sheriff is proposing that he would like to have a second location, which was also discussed at length in Master Facilities Plan, and was decided that a West County location will be very helpful in order to make sure that the current site, which is almost at capacity on parking situation, it would really be helpful for people in Meridian and Star and Cuna and other places not to come into downtown Boise, but really go to a West Ada County location and take care of the driver's license needs there. So in conclusion, in today's hearing, you are considering these 4 projects. The design cost for Coroner's facility is around $1.7 million. The pod E addition and CCU upgrade is around $3.1 million. Recommended PSB complex expansion is $1 million, and recommended second driver's location is $500,000. As I conclude, I want to share that we all are aware of the construction price escalation in Treasure Valley. If you talk to experts, you will hear the numbers that range from 4% to 12%. And even if you consider just the 5% construction cost escalation on any given year, Madam Chair, by not acting on Master Facilities Plan's recommendations, you're causing the taxpayers almost $5 million. So therefore, I would like to encourage you to really consider use of some of the foregone taxes today. And with that, I would invite Coroner Owens to talk about her needs. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Just quickly, so if you go back to that slide, please. So you're taking a 5% construction escalation, and you're saying in general, you're hearing it's more 4% to 8%.
4 to 12%.
4
If
to
you
12.
talk to industry experts, you will hear any range between 4 to 12%, and that's just labor increase. When I think about my handy person, his rates have gone up. So it's one of those things that, labor market is getting more competitive, and so is the material and other costs that keeps increasing in the industry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Mitra, during our recent Board of Equalization hearings, on several occasions, appellants produced evidence that properties were selling below appraisal. So it was clear that several properties had inflated values. How did you calculate the potential for inflated values into this chart?
Have I calculated the inflated values in this chart for purchase of the coroner's or sheriff's facility, or are you talking about just inflation in?
On these three items listed here, these three complexes.
Sure. No, sir, we have not considered that. Where we derive the numbers is comps in the area. So if we had recommended that the coroner's office is in this corridor, what were the comps for 2.5 to 5 acre site selling? So we actually use the comps in building the cost for coroner's office.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further questions? I have a few questions for you. We have people, this is streaming live, so we have folks that are listening to this for the first time. So I think it's really important that we let people know, when we came into office almost 6 months ago, seems longer, but it's been about 5.5 months, I was really pleasantly surprised to see that the prior board and elected officials and your office, the Development Services Office, had done so much work around strategic planning, around capital improvements and the needs. I applaud all of you for doing that. And the effort, it looks like, was purposeful. It was well thought out. My understanding of that process was that the Development Services team put together a team that consisted of elected officials and department heads that then got together, and that transformation board is the board that actually is teeing up the priority projects that we're seeing here tonight, and that was quite a long process. And if you'd like to just quickly speak to that, I think that's an important key to this, to know that we're not up here or the coroner or the sheriff saying that this is the most important project, my project. It's actually been a long-term, well-thought-out team process.
Thank you for mentioning that, Chairman Kenyon. Yes, you're absolutely right. From the inception of the Master Facilities Plan, developing the scope of work to issue the RFQ, from that point onwards, it was a collaborative process through and through of Ada County leadership. We had Assessor McQuaid sit on the selection committee for that. We had trial court administrator sat on the selection committee for consultant selection. And then after the consultants were selected, we were able to engage in 3 it was every Thursday, every other month, almost Thursday afternoons, 3-hour-long meetings where every leader, 19 leaders would roll up their sleeves and sit around the table and review everything that we were developing in terms of how many facilities we have, where we have what kind of operations, how many employees are at each location, what adjacencies are needed in the future to make sure that we are continuing to operate in a more effective manner. So every leader and our consultants were thoroughly impressed because at every meeting we had 90+% participation from county's leadership, which is unheard of when you think about it. And over the course of a year, we met on 6 different occasions to kind of shape the project to where it is today in terms of the recommendations that the board considered in June last year.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Lachanda.
to pick up on that, I concur and agree. I was very pleased and impressed to see the work that was done throughout the Master Facilities Plan. But also for the folks who are here tonight and who are potentially watching this online, I want to confirm that as a part of that, the prior board did not dedicate any funding stream to support the development or the implementation of that plan.
They did try to hold a public hearing to discuss using of Forgone for the sheriff's expansion. But unfortunately, that did not result in an actual implementation item. So yeah, there were discussions about implementation because the board was aware of the fact that the new board may be coming in, they were letting that be deferred to you.
All
But
to
yes,
us.
there was no, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to clarify, coming in new to this position, looking at the master's facility plan, can be overwhelming. It looks like there's a lot of deferred capital improvements, a lot of probably deferred maintenance that we're seeing as well. And you mentioned that the overall cost is looking upwards to probably around $250 million. But that is like a 10-year plan. That's a 10, 11, 12-year plan. So I don't want people, the public, to think that we have to get this all done at once. But we do have to start chipping away at this a little bit at a time to make it feasible, because nobody likes to see huge hikes in anything in any given month or year. Thank
Correct.
you. Any further questions? All right. Thank you for now.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have the coroner, Dottie Owens, and she's going to tell us about her project. Good evening.
Good evening. Madam Chair, Commissioners, first I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present on behalf of my office. First and foremost, a thank you to all of the Ada County elected officials for their work and dedication to moving this project forward in an attempt to keep up with our population growth. A special thank you to Development Services, Operations, and our Ada County legal team. This project could not have been this successful without you and your dedication to our community. County government plays a role in every stage of our residents' lives. It is our responsibility to build and develop an infrastructure that will meet the growing needs of our community. An investment in our county's future is smart and responsible planning, making sure we have the infrastructure that we're going to need, whether it's a courthouse, a jail expansion, coroner's office, and it's essential to all of our success. This request is for $1.76 million for design and implementation of a new coroner facility. This evening I will discuss the following and appreciate any questions that you have. The Ada County Coroner's Office is currently operating in a facility constructed in 1966 as a warehouse, with the Coroner's Office occupying the building in 2000 and then the morgue added in 2002. At the time of the remodel, it was projected that the ACCO would outgrow the facility within 20 years. Our coroner's office provides a critical service during the most difficult time in many people's lives, and it is important that we have the necessary resources available for our community and our county and our state. Without the new facility, the statutory responsibilities of the coroner's office are a continuous struggle. My staff has been accomplishing their work in challenging conditions, and facility limitations cause hardships on the families that we serve. Our caseload has expanded significantly with the population growth, and we are only as strong as our infrastructure, which is beginning to crumble down around us. With our growth over the last several years, we have and will continue to see a consistent escalation in deaths across all demographics of Ada County, to include those caused by violence, criminal means, especially lately overdose and suicide rates. Last year, the office investigated a total of 3,400 cases within a population of about 470,000. This is a 3% increase from the previous year, and the increase is consistent from the years past. By 2025, we will be at an estimated 4,400 cases per year, and without a serious infrastructure change, we will be operating with the same challenges that we are now, only at an elevated level. The pressure of increased caseload will have a trickle-down effect to our families and all of those that we serve. A staffing and workload analysis was completed in 2016. Our projected increase in this projected our increase in this cases, and we are currently unable to house our current staffing needs. Staffing needs will continue to grow with population increase to meet the demands of our office, and you can see where they're anticipating us to be by 2040. Our employee work areas have become a huge critical challenge. Our major employee stressors are we have no privacy to communicate with families. As shown in this top photo, this is our investigations area. And when we're having these critical and serious conversations with families, everything that's going on in this space can be echoed and is heard through these phone conversations. It's caused huge challenges. Cramped quarters to complete emotionally exhausting and time-sensitive work has been a stressor on our team. This particular team is always sick, and we are currently over the national average in sick time with our investigators. Little or no storage space for our forensic identification tools and equipment is also a challenge. Our forensic team shares an office with over 80 skeletal remains, and this is the bottom photo. Lack of functionality, a functioning facility has a major impact on the residents of Ada County, families of decedents, employees, funeral homes, hospitals, and our law enforcement. Our cooler is consistently at capacity, and as a result, families are asked to make immediate decisions about funeral arrangements in funeral homes, often on the scene or immediately after learning and being notified of the death, and there is no time for the grieving process. Funeral homes participate in a mandatory 24-hour pickup so that we are able to clear out that space and then occupy with the new cases coming in. Parking is not sufficient for families and outside agencies that need to conduct business at our office. Parking and street views is become a major issue. We lack the necessary privacy from public view. Any passerby can view us moving decedents in and out of our vehicles into the building. We have even had incidents of people stopping on the street taking photos of us removing and entering these decedents in and out of the office. These photos up at the top where that red arrow is shows where our intake. This is where all the intake process occurs on every single body that comes through the office. The photo with where you can see our van and there you can actually see the street and see how easy that is for someone to pull in and be able to snap photos. And we've had that challenge. Lack of meeting space is another problem that we are suffering. Often the only available space to speak with family members is in the lobby where our day-to-day business is conducted. Today, one of my supervisors approached me with a serious issue where she was sitting on the floor of the lobby with family members that were crying about a recent death within the last 2 days, and FedEx and UPS are walking in the front door delivering packages, and my phone is ringing, and so she's conducting these interviews and trying to help these families while the normal ongoings of the office is occurring. Staff meetings and meetings with outside agencies are conducted with minimal privacy. We're often meeting with our attorneys. We're often meeting with law enforcement regarding certain cases, and those conversations can more than not be heard throughout most of the admin area. We have an access issue within the office for our families. One critical issue is that our office is non-ADA compliant. Family members and others with special needs are not able to participate in meetings in our conference room, so these meetings have to take place in the lobby. There is no area in the facility for a family to see decedents or to be able to address religious practices, which is a consistent request and concern. We are constantly getting requests for families to come in and view their loved ones prior to release to the funeral home, especially if this occurs over a weekend or a holiday, and they didn't get that opportunity. This is a huge stressor on our families, and it causes trauma and additional grief. Our autopsy suite is a challenge for our forensic team. There is no room for outside agencies to attend autopsies, and as you can see in this top photo, we have multiple agencies present that it's a necessary attendance for this particular case, and there's just standing room only in this area. Due to our space limitations, certain equipment cannot be used easily. We do all of our own internal x-rays to try to save taxpayers money of doing that over at the hospitals. And unfortunately, we're having to do those very early in the morning before we get everybody in there because there's no room for the equipment. Evidence and cooler storage has been an ongoing issue, and I know you've all heard me speak very passionately about this issue. Our current facility operates at full capacity, and overcrowding is experienced not only in just the cooler, but our evidence storage and our retention. Delaying the cost of our facility not only is going to have a huge impact on our families, but also a fiscal one upon the county. The cost of delaying a new coroner facility is roughly $800,000. The delay from 2019 we've already experienced, and as you heard Mitra say, the initial request was 2015 when we started talking about this. $880,000 is the hard dollars and cents cost, but the impact to the 80 county residents that have lost loved ones is a cost that cannot be measured by dollars and cents. In conclusion, layout and design are foundational, and we will continue to look for ways to reduce costs. With our name accreditations, we are constantly applying for grants, seeking grants and other funding opportunities that will help relieve this burden. The Ada County Coroner's Office will most definitely continue to seek innovative ways to reduce the impact of this project on our taxpayers. Any questions?
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Any questions?
I
Ms.
do have
Marciano?
questions. I'd like Coroner Owens to clarify something, both for myself and the public. I know that the Ada County Coroner's Office not only serves Ada County, but serves as a regional coroner's office. And certainly everywhere I go in Idaho, people sing your praises, and I appreciate all the work that your office does. But I think I certainly had some concerns, and I assume the general public may as well, about whether Ada County taxpayers are subsidizing those needs in other communities. I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
Absolutely, thank you. Actually, we are servicing 36 jurisdictions, and our autopsy service and forensic services are the only thing that we do for these counties. Each county has their own jurisdictional coroner and investigation unit. These services actually serve as a revenue base for us and offsets our operating budget very nicely.
Could you speak to the space turnover and how that works?
Absolutely. We actually do not store an out-of-county decedent. They come in first thing in the morning. It's usually the first autopsy that we do, and then we release immediately after. They're passing through the cooler, and that's the extent of the storage of our out-of-counties in Ada County.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you.
Well, I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to you and your staff. I know how difficult this job is for all of you. I've been up to the facility, and it is, I want to say, deplorable, somewhat embarrassing for Ada County and residents. And I think that it's sad that we're sitting here 4 years later talking about this. I heard the testimony last year of a family who couldn't see their son pass away, and I just think that we do better than that in Ada County.
We do, and
We do.
Madam Chair, that's one of the most difficult pieces that we have. As I was saying in my presentation, when my supervisor mentioned having to sit on the floor in this lobby with this crying family, we can't accommodate these people, and these are the people most in this county that we need to accommodate. This is such a hard time for everyone that comes to our office. And so we need to do what we can. I can't tell you the number of mothers that have sat in our parking lot through the weekend just to be near her child because we could not let her in that facility. This is a huge problem, and we're hearing about it all the time. We try to accommodate. We had one particular family member that sat in our parking lot for an entire weekend, and we checked on her and made sure she had what she needed and she was okay, and our hands are tied. Unfortunately, it's something we keep having to say over and over again, and we shouldn't be.
Sad state of affairs. Thank you so much for your presentation. Really appreciate it. All right, we're going to take up next Sheriff Stephen Bartlett's presentation, and then we'll open it up for public testimony at that time. Again, if you've not filled out a card and you wish to testify tonight, please do so. There's cards in the back of the room. There's also cards at the podium when you come up. And again, just state your name when it's time for testimony and not your address. Sheriff Bartlett. Nice to see you here this evening. I know you were running across town from some other event.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you so much for the chance to be in front of you tonight. I do appreciate having the opportunity to go second. We had a very exciting opportunity tonight. Our Chief of Police in Eagle is retiring, and we had the opportunity to meet with our city council out there and get our new chief up and running. And so that started at 5:30, and we obeyed all of the speed limits getting here, but I
We
did
won't
not
tell
turn on
anyone.
any lights or any of that getting here. But I too would like to echo exactly what Dottie has said, and even our county commissioners, about how our development services has worked very hard over the last number of years. Our master facility group that has come together, I think they said it best. This is not the coroner standing in front of you. This is not the sheriff standing in front of you to talk about just our individual needs, but this is a collective conversation that has been going on for many, many years, not only in front of the commissioners, but as a working group for us to figure out the right way for us to provide services to the citizens that we took office to take care of. And so for that reason, I'm appreciative of the opportunity to stand in front of you. I'm also honored to represent all of the citizens that I get to serve as their 38th sheriff here in Ada County, and take that as a great honor and don't take that lightly to represent them. So thank you so much. A lot of what you're going to see tonight is information that you, the county commissioners, were able to see in our budget presentation. Some of the same slides, but what we've done is hone that into specifically talk about the three areas that you've asked us to focus on for tonight's presentation. And so tonight I'm going to walk you through a conversation about why we need to purchase property for the expansion of our jail. I'm going to walk you through why we need to look at adding to our facility, building out our jail because of our capacity and operational issues. I'm not sure if everybody else is hearing it, but there's a pretty good ring up here. And then lastly, I want to talk about the need for our second driver's license location, probably the hottest topic in Ada County right now. And so Ada County continues to be among the fastest growing counties in the country. If you look at this slide in front of you, as presented, 22% population growth in Ada County since 2012. And then an overlay of that, as you've heard from many of the presentations over the last little while, that the Treasure Valley will be over 1 million people, according to Compass 2040, and all of those discussions. And as you can see, significant growth. Since 2010, the total number of households in Ada County has increased 23.7%. Since 2014, the number of jobs in Ada County has increased by 21%. The Treasure Valley has seen 17.6% increase in the number of hospital beds in our hospitals here to service our growing population. And yet, interesting enough, while all of these services and all of these organizations and everybody is moving to Ada County, we have not added jail bed space in a significant way since 2004. The Ada County Jail opened its doors in 1977 with 161 beds. So as we walk through this, I just would like to set the stage a little bit so that you can learn a little bit more about our jail. So as I said, 1977, 161 beds. Currently, we have 1,116. Are you able to hear me?
There's no-
Okay.
yeah, there's
no
no-
ring up there?
no ring up here.
It's ringing. 1,116 beds in our current facility right now. And as you look down through this list, I won't go over them all. The largest bed addition that we had last was in 2004. Significantly different than all of the other people, services, and space that we've added here in Ada County. We have had it added 2 specialty units, most recently, which were huge additions for us from the service side, the industry, which is our health services unit in 2008, and then we added 88 beds for our maximum custody unit in 2012 inside of our current facility. One of the ways that we have been able to hold off this population crisis in Ada County with our jail is through smart management of our inmates, all of which is designed to reduce recidivism and costs to our taxpayers. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but on your screen you see a number of those projects and programs that we discussed in our larger budget presentation. The current jail is no longer adequate for the growing needs of Ada County. Our jail average daily population has increased just over 19% since 2015. Over the last 5 years, the number of bookings has remained somewhat stable for us at the sheriff's office, but our length of stay, which is that significant conversation that we've been having with all of our criminal justice partners, has significantly increased. So although the number of people coming through the back door has stayed pretty consistent, the length of stay is huge for us, from 38 days up to 45 days. And we'll talk more about that if you need clarification on that. But what that really means for us is improving those services in the criminal justice services, all the way from conversations with our judges, to our prosecutors, our public defenders, all of our services here in the community. Do we really have those available for us to take care of our clientele in the right way? And so that's a lot of jail days when we start adding up people staying here for that number of days. The jail has been over operational capacity 76.3% of the time since 2016. Staggering numbers for us. When I talk about operational capacity, what does that mean? Well, in order for us to be able to keep our jail safe, maintain the pillars of the jail, the safety of our facility and the security of our staff, we have to have a little bit of breathing room in the jail for us to move inmates around, to ensure that the right people are in the right space and we're not creating a safety hazard, not only for the inmate, but for our staff as well. When we talk about some of these major cases that we're working and seeing coming through our courts and through IDOC, and even through our own facility now, having the ability, we call it keep separates, but having the ability to have co-defendants in this most recent case, upwards to 15 people that we had to make sure that they could not communicate with, see, or be in the same vicinity as somebody else that's in that same trial. That all happens within the movements of our facility, and without having spare bed space, and when I say spare, I mean open, within our operational capacity, we cannot keep those inmates and our staff safe within our facilities. And so a lot of people look at that operational capacity of 85% saying, well, you have open bed space. Well, we actually don't. And over the last couple of years, as you'll see, our daily population is well over 1,000 inmates on any given day, and so that number is drastically reduced. This is what overcrowding looks like. On any given day, as you walk through the jail, and I know you as commissioners take your jail tours, you've seen this firsthand. At one point last year, we had upwards to 100 people sleeping on the floor because we just don't have the ability to keep our inmates separate in our various housing areas. For us at the sheriff's office, as your sheriff, we bring this in front of you to say, we need a solution. And the solution for us is additional jail beds. Over the last 3 years, IDOC inmates have averaged nearly 18% of our total population. This has been one of those conversations that we've been having with the commissioners, and the trend is only trending up for us. We've been constantly working, just about daily, with our partners and friends at IDOC, and I'm happy to say that the director of IDOC, Josh Tewalt, is here in the audience today and is willing to be a part of conversations between Ada County and IDOC as we figure out what the right solution is for us moving forward. And on any given day, we've got 200 or so inmates from IDOC in some form of transition between our two facilities and awaiting court appointments and sentencing and all the things that go along with our criminal justice system. And so I know that Director Tewalt is willing to talk about the challenges, not only on his side of the building, but also on ours and what that potentially could look like. I know, Commissioners, you granted me the authority to reach out to our legislators and to Director Tewalt for us to figure out some form of a co-solution. We don't know what that answer looks like. And as a result of tonight's conversation, I'm happy to say that just last night, he and I were sitting down to navigate what this looks like and for the right answers for our Ada County taxpayers. Because I feel very strongly that we as Ada County taxpayers should not be taking on the burden of housing IDOC inmates. While jail overcrowding is a national problem, you don't have to look too far to the west of us to see exactly what real life looks like inside a jail with overcrowding issues. You can quickly see consent decrees and staffing issues and morale issues and security issues. I spoke with Sheriff Donahue and told him that don't take it the wrong way, but the last thing we want to become is Canyon County. The last thing that we want is a federal judge coming into our house to tell us how we as elected officials should be managing our finances and our responsibility here in Ada County. So what have we done about this population growth and the jail problem? Well, the Ada County Sheriff's Office is actively engaged in reducing the inmate population through evidence-based programs. This is all about reducing risk for us here in Ada County. In 2018, jail alternatives in all of our programs saved approximately 500 jail beds per day, resulting in an estimated savings of just over $2 million. And I know we spent a significant amount of time presenting this to you in our budget presentation, and some of those services that we provide, that the court has authorized to supervise and the commissioners have allowed us to do, greatly enhance the services that we can provide to our citizens here in Ada County. One of the major ones that I had the privilege to be a part of was the Safety and Justice Challenge. Ada County joined this challenge in the spring of 2015, where we as Ada County, as the Sheriff's Office, took a big leap. We stood along with 191 other agencies across the nation and said, take a look at us. Come underneath of our veil and see how we do business. be critical of what we do and evaluate if we are doing things the right way. There's not a whole lot of agencies out there that when you finally come to that realization that you're going to allow the country to scrutinize how you do business. But we felt strongly as a sheriff's office that we wanted to do that. And we were selected as one of 20 agencies to participate in that program. And through that, we've been able to bring a lot of our county partners, our focus groups, from A to Z to evaluate, are we doing the right thing at the sheriff's office? I know, Commissioner Laciando, you make reference to that. If we are going to stand in front of our community, if we're going to stand in front of you, the county commissioners, and speak to the fact that we need more jail space, have we done everything within our power to ensure that we have exhausted all other efforts internally and with our stakeholders and our community? And I'm happy to stand in front of you as you read down through these lists to say, yes, I believe we as a county, we as elected officials, and we as focus groups and sheriff's office employees have worked tirelessly to make sure that we can do that for you, the county commissioners. An additional resource that we have that we're working on right now, we just submitted a grant application to the Department of Justice. This grant will allow us potentially to receive $900,000 over the next 3 years. It will be specifically used for us to evaluate and provide services for our jail to community inmates that potentially would be struggling with addiction and opioid issues in our community. It would allow us to provide certain services inside our walls and then transition those to community partners and our stakeholders and everybody else that's standing right alongside of us. It would allow us to reduce recidivism. And then ultimately, as you just heard from our coroner, one of the things that we're working hard on is perhaps that this program and this grant will allow us to reduce the number of overdoses that we're seeing because we're partnering with the right people. Over the last 4 years, we've spent a lot of time and attended a lot of community meetings. Almost 40 of them. So about one a month, we've stood in front of our community, whether that be at a Kiwanis meeting or at a Leadership Boise, Leadership Meridian, at all of our city meetings, at our Regional 4 Behavioral Health Board, Boise State, and the list goes on and on and on, that all of our employees, just not myself, but a lot of our employees that are passionate about the right thing happening have gone out into our community. We've taken the media into our jail. We've taken them on ride-alongs. We've taken them through all of our services that we provide to make sure that our community is well aware of this ever-growing problem that I speak to you about today. Jail expansion is needed to meet the community needs and maintain our public safety. As you saw in the master facility presentation, one of our requests is $1 million to acquire property. We're looking in the vicinity of our sheriff's office to see what's available for property so that we can acquire additional space so that we can expand our facility before the prices of land skyrocket. All indications that we have is that property values are on the rise. Yes, you may hear that there's a few areas that has decreased, but most of the people that we're talking to are sharing with us that land and the value of land is only going to increase. And so we're asking the county commissioners to partner with us and find that right solution by acquiring some property. Professional design and services to determine the best expansion options to include land purchase as well as design and architectural plans to prepare for construction. I know during our budget presentation, one of the things that we were asked was, can you go out and evaluate what it's going to cost for us to build or expand, acquire land? Is it cheaper for us to build up in a parking lot versus purchasing land and expanding out in a single story? This cost of $3.1 million is exactly what the master facility plan and working group came back and said, that money is needed for us to go out and do the research for you. So I stand in front of you representing the master facility, the capital improvement conversation to say, everybody that we've talked to says that it's more expensive to build up. The costs are astronomically higher. We've talked with our operational staff. We've talked with builders here locally. And most of the professionals that we're talking to all say if you can acquire land and build flatter structures, the cost to not only your taxpayers but to your commissioners and this program would be significantly reduced. Not only in the building portion of that, but in the ongoing maintenance and services of those structures. So next, let's just talk a couple of minutes about driver's license. As I said, probably the hottest topic that I see and that's being discussed here in Ada County. The Ada County Sheriff's Office currently operates a single driver's license location. Driver's license is averaging a little over 4,300 transactions per week so far in 2019. Our average transaction time has improved a little bit over the last few months, from just over 8 minutes a transaction in 2018 to about 7 minutes and 14 seconds in 2019. And when I say transaction time, that means when you get to the counter to leaving the building.
Okay.
We all were wondering what you meant by that.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit about wait times. Happens to be my next slide. Despite our best efforts, and I will put a plug in for our driver's license staff, we do not have any more dedicated staff than our driver's license staff. They have been through hell and back over the last year. And I commend each and every one of them for showing up day after day after day, because it is a thankless, it's a tough job. And, we talked about it in the budget presentation that there's very few other jobs that we've had to call the police to help defend our staff. And that happened twice during our budget presentation that week, where we've had to call our patrol deputies to be there. So despite our best efforts, the average customer wait time has increased from about 50 minutes in 2018 to just under an hour. I think we're 59 minutes currently right now. And when I talk about what are our best efforts, you see these pictures here. These pictures were actually taken the week we presented our budget presentation at 7:20 in the morning. We don't open our doors until 7:30. And when we talk about what we've done, I just want to talk about a couple of things. We've expanded our hours on both sides. We were open 8 to 5. We've extended our hours to 7:30 to 5:30, which is all we're able to do because of our ITD computer restrictions. We've added staff, thanks to the commissioners. We've added a few additional bodies over there. We've added some stations as a result of a great relationship with our assessor's office. We've added a call taker position, where now instead of before you arrive, you can make a phone call and talk to people before you arrive to make sure you know what the wait time is and that you're bringing the right paperwork. We've put in calendar appointments where you can now go online and schedule an appointment instead of standing in line. We've also added a receptionist, as you see in the bottom picture right here, because one of the biggest things that we're seeing is people are getting all the way to the counter to get their license renewed or their Star Card, and they're finding out that they don't have the appropriate paperwork with them for the transaction. And so this person is really saving us a lot of headaches in confrontations up front, because they're able to send people away instead of waiting in line for an hour and a half or 2 hours to make sure that they come back with the right paperwork. So where should this secondary location be? Well, our data experts have done a lot of research on that, and you'll see here, according to our heat map, by where people are moving and traveling from in Ada County. The first photograph is of 2010, and then the next photograph is of 2040, according to our Compass 2040 reports. All indications show our major population growth is west, out towards Meridian, Cuna, and Star. And so our recommendation from the Sheriff's Office is that we look for a secondary driver's license location somewhere out towards the 10-mile Highway 16 and Shinden location, or maybe the 10-mile and the freeway location, where we can really pick up that population growth. And with that, I would stand for any questions. I know Director T-Walt would stand for any questions, or we'll come back later.
Stand for questions. Thank you.
I'm here.
All right. Again, thank you for your presentation. Your dedication and passion is evident. And we will start with Commissioner Lachiondo or Visser. Commissioner Visser, who's ready for questions?
Well, I may make a statement and then ask a question, and I think it's going to be to both you and Director T-Walt. So based on my calculations, as you noted, we're up to an average length of stay of 45 days at the Ada County Jail. Based on the reports that we're seeing, on any given day, we have between 120 and 150 inmates who are technically the responsibility of the Idaho Department of Corrections. Does that number sound about right?
Yeah, I think that's, it fluctuates. It's anywhere from 120 people, and some days it's over 200 people.
Okay. So I'm going to take the conservative amount of 120 and note that the state reimburses us $55 a day for the first 7 days and $75 thereafter. But our cost to provide services, stay services, is $96 a day. So we're, estimating we're subsidizing the state at about $21 per person per day. So if I do the math on that, at the conservative number of 120, I'm looking at about $2,400 a day, or approximately $900,000 a year. And if you go upward of that to 150 inmates a day, it's certainly over $1 million a year that we're subsidizing the state. So I share your concerns and your frustrations about the idea and the reality of Ada County property taxpayers subsidizing a state responsibility. And this is where I really would appreciate the opportunity to hear from Director T-Walt and understand what measures are being taken to take that burden off of Ada County taxpayers.
Certainly.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioner. First off, Sheriff Bartlett invited me here to talk about driver's licenses.
We're going to do those at the prison
Okay.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can just wing it.
But I'll talk about this since we're here. Really, obviously, the sheriff and I work closely together because we understand the frustrations. But it's also not as simple as a particular person being the state's responsibility And because the challenges we have are every bit as complicated as the people in our custody or under our supervision. So I'll use today as an example where we may have somewhere in the neighborhood of 130 people associated with the Idaho Department of Correction sitting in Ada County Jail. A significantly smaller portion of those, in the neighborhood of 50, are actually available for transport. That means we can come get them. Now, there are a number of other people that are associated with IDOC, but they're sitting in Ada County Jail for other reasons, whether they're awaiting sentencing, whether they're being held for a parole violation hearing in place, or other entanglements that are causing them to be there. We can't necessarily pull them out. So there is a very real concern, and I certainly understand the importance that every bed counts. But we also, when we get into the cost, I think it's important to note that a county jail operation is very different than a state prison operation. So the costs associated with managing a state inmate, while real, also aren't the same as somebody you're going to be investing resources in for pretrial or for treatment, programming, those types of things. Generally, our inmates aren't availing themselves of that service. But we also have a system where every person that comes to IDOC first walks through a county jail. That's where they start. That's where they have pretrial. That's where they're sentenced, and a number of those things. So the reality is, we have a growth issue statewide as well. I came on as director December 1, and our population was right around 8,630. Today, we were 9,078. So, in the last 6-7 months, we've grown over 430 people in our custody. Last year during the legislative session, the legislature approved an additional 400 beds. Those are in the process of being constructed. We've added several hundred beds along with our existing infrastructure. We have 658 inmates that are out of state today in a Texas facility. And then we also are preparing a proposal to come to the legislature this next year for somewhere in the neighborhood of an additional 1,000 beds. And where I think that's relevant, especially for Ada County, is at least noting who's coming to our system. Because you look at the number of new term commitments coming to prison, well over 3/4 of those are people who have failed probation, failed parole, or failed a retained jurisdiction program. And where Sheriff Bartlett and I have had a number of conversations is really, we need beds, but we need the right beds. And we need those beds to be focused on crime reduction. And for us, we have a significant opportunity to affect that supervised population, to intervene before they commit new crimes, which also will free up some of our existing infrastructure, but most importantly is to reduce crime and reduce the need for the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's office, and other local law enforcement to interact with that population, because we're putting them on hopefully a more successful track.
Madam Chair, if I may. So, Director T-Wall, you and I have briefly talked in the past about the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, and I support the concept of reducing incarceration rates and reinvesting in the system upstream. I think the concern that we have, and others certainly have, is that sometimes it seems that the piece that's missing is the reinvestment, especially on the back end as folks are exiting from prison. And those are the folks who are then reoffending, tying up time in our jail, certainly tying up our staff time, and not only affecting the budget conversations that we're having today, but also the ones that we are having throughout our budget process. Need for public defenders, need for prosecutors. We have 4 new judges coming on board. I think our total cost for all those needs in the judiciary system for us this year, we're about $1.7 million that we've already accounted for in our budget. So could you elaborate a little bit more on what does that reinvestment look like? What does it look like to help people who are exiting the system become successful in our community?
Well, Madam Chair, Commissioner, I think it looks like investing at different points than we're traditionally used to. And that's what we plan to take to the legislature, are more intensive community-based treatment options with additional accountability, but those appropriate interventions for folks when they are starting to destabilize or when they start displaying additional risk factors. And so, we run in, and I think as an agency, we've done a disservice in the past because we want to talk about beds or we want to talk about supervision. But there's a lot more that contributes to people being successful. And then you get into that argument of, what's the responsibility of the state to pay? And I think I think that argument's probably misappropriated in this conversation because we've already decided that we're willing to pay for 100% of their failure. We'll foot that bill every day. And so where we're looking, and especially where we're looking to partner with the county and Sheriff Bartlett are the types of beds and resources that look a lot more like helping people be successful, that include wraparound services that address other risk factors such as housing, transportation, those types of things, and really preventing the need for that person who needs additional treatment from having to go back to a prison bed or having to sit in Ada County Jail because we have a different type of option to get them the help they need and keep them placed in the community at the same time.
Thank you. I lost my microphone thing. So we've never met. Nice to meet you this evening. I have a couple of questions on the transition centers. Sheriff Bartlett has mentioned to me the concept of transition centers. And if you could explain to the folks here tonight what a transition center is. I believe 2 of them have already been funded by the state. And could you tell us what counties those are being built in, and why you did not choose Ada County, because the population base is obviously here? Three questions in one.
Madam Chair, let's take the last part first. We have 3 in Ada County. 2 in Ada County already. We have 1 in Canyon County in Nampa, and we have a current one in Idaho Falls. We were approved for a community reentry center in Twin Falls, and we also were approved for one in North Idaho, and we're still trying to locate where to put that. The concept on the reentry centers is really geared towards providing people more stable footing when they release from our institutions. So it's similar to a work center, has a treatment component to it, but it's really about building employment, allowing them to earn resources to provide for their own reentry once they're released. And it's a unique incentive for our population in custody to work towards that opportunity, and we really gear it towards the last 18 months they're in our custody, whether they're topping their time or whether they have a release date on parole. The concept we're going to advance in this next legislative session is that similar concept, but in reverse. It would be more of a sanction-type violation center for those folks who are starting to destabilize that may be working their way back to prison, to really give them an opportunity in a more secure environment to get things turned around. And what that looks like for us today is I can give you examples of people who are sitting in prison, not necessarily as a parole violator or not because they've had their parole revoked, but because the parole commission wants them there to get a treatment program. Well, what happens when you do that is you take somebody who may have had some protective factors. They may have had a job, they may have had an apartment, they may have had a vehicle, and now you've pulled them out of the community, and those things are gone when they get back. And so we've essentially put them in prison to get a treatment program, and then we're going to ask them to start over when we let them out. And so I think, the name of the game and what we all care about is reducing crime. And so we're looking to propose a bed option that allows us to better get at the reasons people are violating. And it's not just supervision, it's not just treatment, but some other factors, and really try to give them an honest shot at being successful.
Thank you. Follow-up question?
Madam Chair, if I may. So I want to make sure that I fully understand this. So under current operational practice, if there's a parole violation, probation violation, the first place the person goes is to our county jail, at which time we don't know how long they may be there, and then they may end up with you, they may not. So my understanding of this transition center, as explained by you and the sheriff, is that this would be an alternative location for them to go to either potentially transition to prison or work their way back into society. Do I have this correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we're looking at that about 50 beds on any given day, potentially, of folks who could be eligible for your services who might be available for this, or is it the full 120? What are we talking about in terms of the numbers that we're seeing who are taking up bed space in the Ada County Jail?
Well, Madam Chair, Commissioner, I think that's a hard number to estimate off the top of my head, but I think we provide relief to the county in two ways. Well, I'll say three ways. The first is if we do what I think we're tasked with doing, and that's reducing crime, I think you're going to see fewer people coming to the Ada County Jail in handcuffs because they've had interaction with local law enforcement and were taken into custody. Like, that's goal number one, is to reduce that need on the front door. Goal number two is to provide a better alternative for people who are currently in prison to receive a treatment program that might be better served in a community setting, which will do what really JRI in theory was intended to do, and that's reserve prison space for the people who need it most. So you're making room there, and it allows us to take those folks who are going to be with us for a while out of a county jail and put them in our own state-run facilities. And third, I think it provides a unique diversionary option that could significantly reduce the amount of wait time for somebody who is in on a parole violation. If we work with the commission to establish the appropriate guidelines where that type of placement might be appropriate as a sanction, that means instead of that person waiting 90 days in a county jail or even in one of our facilities for a parole violation hearing, that means we might be able to get them in a more suitable bed tailored to their needs much sooner than that, which also would provide relief to the county.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Director T-Walt? Thank you so much. Appreciate your time here. I'm going to come back up. Sheriff Bartlett? Yeah, we're not finished. So along the same lines, we've talked briefly about transition center here in the area close by. If we dedicated the same type of resources and energy in building transition centers versus jail capacity, is that a goal or is that a strategy that we should be looking at instead of continuing to build jails instead of the transition centers that appear to be a much better avenue for a lot of folks that we're now incarcerating?
And Madam Chair, Commissioners, so I'll answer it in a two-part answer that absolutely we need to have, I call them sanction centers, transition centers, whatever that may be. And just to back up to Commissioner Lacciando's question, I believe that number probably is in the 200 right away, whether that's somebody transitioning from the prison or somebody transitioning to the prison in our setting, whether it's the 50, 60 people that are immediate people that qualify under judgment of convictions that are awaiting transport to the prison, or somebody that has been arrested just on some form of a probation, parole violation. And so between both entities, I think that number could be pretty quickly in the 200-300 people on any given day. So I strongly believe that we do need transition centers, and we need sanction centers for us to process people from a jail to community or a community to jail instead of taking up hardened bed space. But my second piece to that answer is we also need hardened bed space, jail bed space, because as you saw in all of my presentation, our population is growing. We need this service available for our current population, and as we navigate the next 1, 2, 5, 10 years, the answer to hard jail bed space, where we actually need somebody in custody for committing a violent crime, is also in need. And so my two-part answer is we need both.
Thank you. Follow-up question?
I'm here all night long, so.
All right. I know that you meant no offense to Sheriff Donahue. But what's happening in Canyon County and the federal consent order there? Can you tell us a little bit about what the cost has been and continues to be for Canyon County for doing nothing and not building jail capacity? Can you just kind of describe the scenario that's happening over there and the costs involved with that to the best of your ability?
Right. Madam Chair, I for sure will talk in general terms about that. I have had many conversations with Sheriff Donahue. He has spoken on this topic at our Idaho Sheriff's Association and around the country. Um, you know, speaking to the topic that he would never wish a consent decree on anyone in this business, because what a consent decree ultimately means is that we as a county failed to provide services as we were required to or mandated to according to our Idaho jail standards. And so what that meant for them was they were completely over capacity in their population at their jail. They also had a number of other issues related to their building just being incredibly old and not keeping up with all of the services, hot water, cleanliness, and everything else that went along with that. And you can read that consent decree. It's very accessible. Just Google Canyon County Jail and consent decree. And just here recently, we had Captain Ward come over from the Canyon County Jail that has lived through that. And in his words, he would say it was the worst experience he's ever been through in his law enforcement career, because it completely changed how they provide services, because it's not up to the local sheriff and the commissioners anymore. It's up to a federal judge to come in and say, this is what you will do, this is when you will do it, this is how you will do it. And that authority from within the local boundaries is taken away. They tell you how many people you are going to have in your custody. And the most significant thing about that for Canyon County that I've heard from them is they only have so many beds and nobody else is allowed in. And so daily, their prosecutor and public defender and the jail administration come together and they talk through, if we only have this many beds for us to provide our service to the community, who are we letting out today? And as a sheriff that's statutorily responsible for number one responsibility is public safety, that's a scary spot to be in, where that authority is handed to you to dictate who should be let out and walking around the streets of your community and who should stay in custody. I hope we as the Ada County government never allow ourselves to get to that place. The second downside to that is the financial cost to it, is they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for attorney fees through various law firms, not to include the dollars that are spent by our prosecutor. Years and years and years of legal work that they've had to work on instead of doing the service of the rest of the county business as a result of being under consent decree.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any further questions for Sheriff Bartlett? Any further questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. Sheriff, earlier, in going through your facts, you stated that the
I'm
jail
having a
was-
really hard time hearing you.
You earlier stated that the jail was at 85% capacity, correct?
Operational capacity.
Operational, okay, what is operational capacity then?
So operational capacity is that 85% of 1,116 inmates, which puts us at 948.6.
Okay, does that mean when you say you're at operational, that operational level, can you not go beyond that?
So when we talk about operational capacity, we have for numerous years now been above operational capacity. And so when we talk about what does that mean for us, I think it goes back to all of the things that we presented in our budget and again here this evening from the standpoint of being above 85% limits the open bed space that we have to move people around inside of our facility to keep them separate from each other. It allows us to, it drastically reduces our ability to manage behavior within our facility and change their housing location on a
Would an
regular
example-
basis.
Would an example of that be that if, say, block 4 was at capacity, say there's 200 beds in block 4, and you have 200 inmates in there, and you have some more coming in, and you have open space in block 7 or 8, is that doable?
No, not initially. So perhaps is the answer. We could potentially put additional people over our capacity, which would never be recommended by our attorneys or our risk managers on any given day. However, let's just talk about the reality of what that looks like. In those pictures, you saw a number of pictures of our dorms with people sleeping on the floor. So for the first 48 to 72 hours when somebody comes into custody at the sheriff's office, you saw that need in our CCU area. Every one of our inmates that come into custody at the sheriff's office go into what we say the original jail, that original 161 beds, the oldest part of our jail. Every one of our inmates go through that location where they're evaluated by our health services unit, they're evaluated by our classification team to get a really good grasp on their criminal history, who they are, have they been involved in criminal activity prior, are they involved in a case currently where they may be a co-defendant or in opposition of somebody else that may be in our jail, are they a member of one of our local gangs or national gangs that can't be housed in the same location as one of our other inmates. And so when we spend those initial 72 hours of classification, medical screening, we're taking a really hard snapshot. We're acting as risk managers to make sure that our inmates aren't going to be involved in a physical altercation. They're not going to be trying to escape from our facility. They're not going to commit some form of battery on our staff. And so at the end of that, one of our dorms holds 92 people. If at the end of those 72 hours we were to evaluate them to be of similar classification as one of those dorms, we've had no other option than to put those inmates in that dorm over capacity. On one day last year, we had 108 inmates in a 92-bed dorm. So pretty easy math to realize that that's not right.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Any further questions?
Take a
A break?
bathroom
You
break.
want a break? All right, I think that's it for now.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
It's been requested that we take a quick 10-minute break, so we'll do that. We're in recess, and we'll come back in 10 minutes.
And for transparency purposes, Director T-Walt just approached the dais and was able to share a little bit more information regarding the potential transition centers that the state is considering, what the time frame of that might be, and some of the treatment and costs associated, in case anyone was wondering what he was talking with us about.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, first up, we have Miguel Legarreta. Come on up. And again, when you get up here, please state your name for the record, because I'm pretty sure I didn't pronounce it correctly.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Commissioners. It is actually Miguel Legarreta. I'm President of the Associated Taxpayers of Idaho. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify this evening. In my brief testimony, I just wanted to provide some additional color or flavor to some of the earlier comments related specifically to property tax and Forgone. And this is in part for the audience as well, but taxing districts, including cities and counties, set their budget not to exceed an increase of 3% to the prior year's budget after factoring growth. A taxing district may choose to set a budget less than the allowed 3%, then use the foregone amount in a later year. In 2009, Ada County had a $10.2 million available foregone balance, and as noted earlier, had grown to a $12.6 million foregone in 2018. The amount of the foregone that can be taken depends on how close the taxing district is to the levy rate limits as well. So that is another factor that plays into it. Of note, in the 2017 legislative session, it's also now possible to permanently disclaim the current year's foregone balance since the passage of House Bill 207 in 2017. And I did look into this, and out of around 1,100 districts in the state, I'm aware of 3 districts who have done so so far. Ada County has obviously experienced tremendous growth over the last 10 years, as noted from earlier presentations. Along with that growth, we've seen around a 47% increase in property values. So adding that together, it does create also an increase in the budget to your Ada County budget, a 10-year cycle of $81.6 million in a levy budget in 2009 to what's currently in a $125.6 million budget in 2018, or an increase of 53.9% in that 10-year period, excluding other income. Ultimately, I appreciate the commission. I live in Ada County as well, and looking at the needs of the county. As a taxpayer organization, I'm obviously up here just to clarify, perhaps state a few facts that may not have been heard clearly, and also with the consideration of having concern over the taxpayer and the burden that not just here but around the state, I'm hearing them that they are facing. And so with that, thank you, Madam Chairman and Commissioners, and with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony.
Okay,
Any
thank you.
questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Ryan Bellinger. And again, when you get up to the podium, please state your name, because I probably mispronounced it. It's okay?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ryan Bellinger. I'm currently the Senior Forensic Technician working under Coroner Owens. My time at the Coroner's Office the past few years has presented itself with many challenges regarding our current facility. Working in forensics has been a real struggle recently. In the morgue, we are pushed to operating limits almost every week. The necessity for more workstations is a clear problem on most days. Our job is to help families find closure, and we want to be able to do that as efficiently and effectively as possible. We're running into the issue where we are operating at our limits and would greatly benefit from a new facility with more autopsy stations in order to keep up with the growth of Ada County and the surrounding areas. Our current morgue was never designed to handle this caseload. We have 2 autopsy suites, one of which was designed to be an infectious cases room. We now have to utilize that suite in order to work 2 cases at a time. We need more doctors, technicians, and autopsy workstations so we can collectively work on cases and continue to grow with Ada County. Our forensic division handles on any given day up to 14 cases. When you begin to stack days like this, we run into storage problems. Our office has no other options as far as storing decedents in our cooler. We are routinely at max capacity and have exhausted all of our backup strategies, which include keeping decedents on extra gurneys and even sharing tables with smaller decedents. We strive to care for these community members with the respect, and we don't want to run into a situation where it could be deemed disrespectful towards a family. These are just some of the key issues I see on a daily basis. Other issues we run into are lack of long-term specimen and evidence storage, space for staffing for new technicians and doctors, parking for staff, families, law enforcement, and others accompanying the decedent, building security for dealing with sensitive cases, and the need for Ada County operations to constantly be fixing this failing building. I don't believe that continuing to patch up our failing facility will do the county or our community any good, and we can continue to improve our care for the deceased and their families with a new and efficient facility. Thank you, and I will
Thank you
stand.
very much. Any questions? Okay, appreciate your testimony here tonight. Okay, next we have an audio clip that we're going to play. We had someone that wanted to testify and they could not physically be here tonight, so they produced an audio clip for us. It's Stacy Sunquist, former Boise resident, and we have Roxanne that's going to go ahead and play it for us.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you for letting me speak.
Good evening.
My name's Garth Warren, and I'm one of the forensic pathologists at the Ada County Coroner's Office. And yeah, thank you for letting me testify. This is way better than testifying in a homicide trial.
Let's hope so.
But I'm not going to beat a dead horse about how our office is old and shanty. I think that's pretty well established. But to me, the bigger issue is that, you know, it's very frustrating. It's very sad when a facility is really the rate limiting step in growth and development of the coroner's office. And I think it's a rate limiting step also as far as hiring good people. Just my own personal experience. I remember I came out here for an interview and I went back and told my wife about it, and I was like, man, the people are great there. It's awesome. You know, awesome people. Their name accredited, thanks to Dottie. Boise's awesome, great place to raise a family. It's kind of like, but, well, it's kind of a crap hole. And it actually was a rate limiting step for me to come here. I almost didn't come just because I came from a beautiful facility. But it was really the people that made the difference. But I don't want to see that going forward, that this could be a rate limiting step, the facility, as far as growth, expansion, and what Dottie wants to do at the office. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. Any questions? No. Appreciate that.
Is that a use of a technical term to describe the office?
Add that one to our list. Okay, are we ready now for the audio clip? Okay.
Good evening, Chairman Kendra Kenyon, Commissioner Diana Lacchiando, Commissioner Rick Visser, and all board members. Today I write this letter because the coroner's office took the time to listen to my story, my experience, shared with them in 2016. I am so thankful they took my outreach seriously and continue to allow me to be a part of something greater than myself. It is truly moving to know today may be a pivotal point in the possibility of profoundly altering the end-of-life experience for other families at the County Coroner Office. Today offers me hope for future families to know the County Coroner Office as much more than a business of investigation, providing identification, autopsy and medical examinations, and notification of next of kin. Hoping you have not had to walk this path, I would like to share my story with you so you might consider how you would want to influence the future. I am the mom of 4 young men. 3 still reside in Boise, and 1 is now my angel in heaven. My son Jacob, born and raised for 24 years in Ada County, suffered a traumatic and violent car crash he did not survive. This was the most horrific news I have ever received. On that day, a son, brother, cousin, nephew, grandson, friend, co-worker, and mentor was lost. On that day, the moments of being a mom and a family were withheld far too long. Upon arriving at the hospital, it was shared with me I could not see, much less hold, my son because he had been taken to the Ada County Coroner's office. In my darkest hour, I was to understand that due to the setup of the coroner's exam area, my only option was to walk away utterly devastated and empty. I could pick a funeral home and perhaps they would work with me. Building a coroner's facility that allows for multiple rooms offering different functionality would be such an improvement in supporting the beginning of healthy grieving for the survivors while maintaining business operations of the staff. Acknowledging the death experience to be one of family unity instead of solidarity would begin the journey of community healing. The coroner's office could be a place that offers hope in a hopeless situation, a facility which offers acknowledgement, dignity, and a glimmer of goodness and light in the darkest hour. I thank you today for listening to my story and for considering making a difference for your community. Thank you, Stacy Sundquist.
Thank you, Stacy, for that heartwarming testimony today. And next up, we'll have Dawn Trevolis come up to the podium, please. Dawn, come on up and welcome. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did.
Okay.
Dawn Trevolis. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm a Meridian homeowner, and I do want to make a disclaimer. I used to work for Ada County in the clerk's office. I'm currently in law school, University of Idaho, and I'm externing at the prosecutor's office in Gem County. I'm here in support of using the foregone taxes. Go ahead, tax me away. Although I'm getting at the point that if I sold my house, I wouldn't be able to afford it anymore. But I think we're all in that position. I so appreciate the services of the coroner and the sheriff's office, what they do. It's a critical aspect of our community. I moved to Idaho 6 years ago, so I've experienced the growth, and it's tremendous. When you have more people, that means that unfortunately there will be more crime. That means more people in jail. That means more people will be deceased. So these are parts of our community that we do have to deal with, and we can't turn a blind eye to them. I am in support of using the foregone, and that's all.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Willis. Appreciate that. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Guy Casablanca. Is Guy here?
It's a great name,
I know, isn't that a great name?
really great name.
You can say it again just for the record.
Guy Casablanca.
All right.
I'm a funeral director with Cloverdale Funeral Home here in Boise. Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm here to express the further-reaching consequences of the limitations of the Ada County Coroner's Office and to ask for your help. As a professional who works in tandem with the Office of the Coroner, I have an intimate working knowledge and firsthand experience with their processes and operations, the demands that they face, and the facilities that they work within. Shortcomings that affect their job duties affect my job duties in direct proportion. Likewise, delays at the coroner's office create delays at the Department of Vital Statistics, which then in turn again affects my ability to do my job. Ultimately, though, the people who pay the highest price for all of this is the citizens of Ada County. And that price comes at probably its highest market value because the demographic that we're talking about are people who have suffered a traumatic loss. These are people who are shattered, who need closure, who need guidance, who need answers. The people of Ada County deserve the highest level of competency and service from what is ultimately the highest ranking law enforcement office in the city, the Ada County Coroner's Office. The people who work in that office are working in an environment that Ada County outgrew years ago. Not only are the facilities inadequate to handle the current caseload, but it's a matter of the public interest that the coroner's office be prepared to handle the future caseload in this rapidly growing county. Now, Sheriff Bartlett spoke most profoundly about the exponential growth of our population here in Ada County, so I'm not really going to expand upon that. But, Sheriff, I also work with the Canyon County Coroner's Office, and you're right. We don't want to be Canyon County. But that is rapidly where we're headed if we don't allow the appropriations that are necessary for the Ada County Coroner's Office to expand. Our sheriffs, our investigators, our Board of Health, our healthcare providers, and scores of other local interests depend on the Office of the Coroner's findings and feedback. Anything that hinders their work is a pitfall for the entire community, one that potentially puts people at risk, if not directly in harm's way, when you consider things like outbreaks and epidemics and health and safety hazards that could literally cost lives. So it's a matter of messaging to the community, and granting the Office of the Coroner the resources they need sends a clear message to our current citizens and to the future inhabitants of this great city that we are ahead of the game, that we are ahead of the issues, that Ada County is ahead of the public interest of health and criminal justice. And I ask for your help in making that happen.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your testimony here tonight. Any questions? Okay, next up is Rachel Priscilla. Come on up. Good evening.
Thank you,
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Rachel Priscilla, and I work for the Ada County Sheriff's Office in the driver's license office. And I just want to say that it is fun there. And I do feel that we need a second location as our county grows, that it's desperately needed. And just being as a citizen, I could have told you where all their little maps told you is right where it needs to go, right there in the west part of the county. I think that as you're building that plan for that second thing, you need to think about the staffing and the needs of the office that we have. Once that's operational, the way that we would love to see all 21 stations fully operational for the community, then that second location would go even more smoothly than just opening a second location without having the first one operationally function. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
I just want to thank you for your work. I know it's a really challenging environment, so really appreciate what you do. Thank you.
All right, next up is Roger Quignon. Come on up. I did? Yes.
Madam Chair,
Good evening.
Commissioners. A year ago, I stood here in front of Commissioner Visser and your predecessors and said to this organization, you as representatives of our community, we're not ready for the growth. I think Commissioner Visser, you'll remember me now, and our part of the community down south, we were getting more homes and apartments pushed in. We're not ready. I challenged this commission to wait, to pause, to think about where we're going. I do it again tonight. I walked in here, to be honest with you, completely neutral. I wanted to see what was going to be said. We're in trouble. Commissioners, we got our coroners up to our eyeballs, literally in death. This is ridiculous. These are our family members, our neighbors. What are we doing? Why haven't we heard about this? We're dealing with two people standing here, our elected people we vote for, who deal with death and life. What are we doing? Why aren't we taking charge on this? How come we haven't heard about this years ago? I don't want to pay any more taxes. Nobody does. Nobody here wants to pay more taxes. But we got to do something better than we're doing. I'm just an average human being. I'm a father, homeowner, husband, son. Our families deserve better than this. Please, look at what we're doing. Find a solution, and we got to do better than just stopgap. Enough of the stopgap. Ada County, Canning County, the state has this. If you build it, they will come. Guess what, people? They're coming. And I don't believe for a minute that we're going to see a couple million people by 2050. Try again, I think, in 10 years. And if we're not ready for this, we're going to be woefully overwhelmed. And the sheriff and the employees and the folks who work at the coroner's office, God bless you all. You deserve better than this. We can do better than this. We are better people than this. I think that's about all I can say.
Thank you.
If I haven't reached at this point, I don't know what else to do. We got to do better.
Appreciate your
Please
testimony.
consider what we're doing here. Let's
Any-
make the future a better one than what we've got now.
Any questions?
Anyone?
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Appreciate your testimony here tonight. All right, next we have Bonnie, and it looks like Knapp, but I'm not sure. Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Bonnie Krupp. Is that a,
Krupp.
yep.
Krupp, okay, thank you.
I came as a taxpayer and seeing the assessments come through from this county assessor's office, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be having problems. And I have elderly neighbors who complain that they are exceedingly worried that they will have to be forced out of their homes. I'm not joking, it is happening. So coming to that, I look at it from a more of a business perspective. I'm looking at there is a need. We have too many prisoners. For some reason, we have a crime problem. Maybe that needs to be addressed before we, look at more beds. And then we have a coroner's office that doesn't have enough room for certain things. And definitely we need a quality coroner's office. I've been to one. I had to sign papers. I had to talk to a coroner, who was an MD, by the way. So it was probably a little bit different. And it wasn't a place to mourn, and it wasn't a place to sit around and cry. And it was a sudden death, and it was very difficult. But I wouldn't have wanted to sit in a room and, and had to, go through all that. I wanted to get it over with, and I wanted to give out the facts that I had to discuss. So I'm simply looking at this, and I'm looking and going like, jails are built everywhere. So there must be plans already, and there must be some very good facilities. Why do we have to have millions and millions of dollars worth of expense to design it? Same way with the coroner's office. I can't see why they need to spend that much just for the design. In other words, I think you're looking at a lot of pork. You want to do everything from ground up. These aren't unique situations. Can't you look at and try and put a stop on some of this expense? I think it's astronomical. I really do. I mean, but then of course we're paying $10 million to renowned architect for a building that may get built, may not, in this city. So I'm just saying, we have a lot of pork here. You really do. And it's, no coroner's office is meant for mourning. I understand the shock and everything very well, unfortunately. So I don't know what, let's keep this the way it should be, adequate, but not, palatial. And I'm hoping you will consider really going back and looking at your budget and seeing where you can cut so we don't have to pay an extra tax. Thank you.
Appreciate your testimony here tonight.
Thank you.
All right, we have one final one, and it looks like it's just an initial, possibly J, Nistal. Good evening.
Commissioners, clerk, and attorney, taxpayers.
Could you state your name for the record?
T. Nistel. My given name is Trevon. I go by T.
Thank you.
I am that mother that sat in the parking lot for 3 days. I'm a real person. My son died suddenly. He was transported to the coroner's office midday on a Saturday. I spent Saturday night, Sunday night, and Monday night in their parking lot. The previous testimony says it's not a place for mourning. I wasn't mourning so much at that time. I'm mourning more now. I was devastated. I needed to see him. I needed to touch him. I needed to kiss him. And I waited until Tuesday afternoon to see him, to touch him, to kiss him, to tell him goodbye. And that's just because they're not set up adequately for families at the coroner's office. It was an unattended death. It wasn't just, somebody gets sick and dies. It was an unattended death. It was a suicide. He left behind a wife and 2 little boys, his mother, 2 brothers, many uncles and aunts. And we were there, waiting to see him. The coroner's office was very good. Come Monday and Tuesday, we went into that conference room because I had 5 siblings that had come and their spouses and my son's father. So we all crammed into that little conference room. It is small, it is hot, and did what we had to do discussing what needed to be discussed. But there's no reason why a family should have to wait to see their loved one and anguish over the loss. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Any
testimony
questions?
here tonight. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony here tonight. I'd also at this time like to read into the record that we received, I think it's approximately 10 to 12 emails over the course of the week, and that the 3 commissioners have read all of the emails, and we'll take that into account in our deliberations here this evening. All right, so any further questions before I close the public hearing and we start deliberations? Commissioner Visser, any further questions? Further questions? All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing tonight, and we will start our deliberation process. And this is not going to be easy, I'm sure.
Well, I think the first one will be easy. In regard to taking these requests in numerical order as they are presented, number 1 being the design cost associated with Ada County Coroner's Office, I am 100% in favor of this project. However, I believe that this money should be transferred over to our general budget and we should make some cuts over there. I'm not convinced that we have the most efficient and most practical general budget at this time. And one way I've thought about doing that, we are proposing a 2% merit raise for our employees and a 1% COLA raise. However, in this budget, we are also adding special salary adjustments, and I have 12 pages of those. They cover several employees throughout the county. And looking through the raises, I see an adjustment of 2% up, 5% up, several at 5% up, several at 8% up, 24%, 10%, several at 7%. I'm not seeing really in the 1%, whatever. So I think this would be a year that great increases will be realized by our employees and not have to, and us not having to give the 3%. I think if we took that 1% COLA and put it over to this cost, we might be able to meet the amount in its total. So again, I support the coroner's design to have a new office. The need is obviously there. I would hope that the architectural firm that designs this facility does so with instructions that it be a practical and efficient design and building. I do not want another boondoggle to come upon the county as we encountered with our dispatch center that went 65% over budget, and that was bailed out with foregone money. So that's my impression on the first item for tonight.
Okay, this is where you get to hear us think out loud. All right, you want me to go next?
Sure, go ahead.
Just to, I think, get some clarification on the numbers that you just threw out. We do have a 2% merit in there and a 1% COLA that we went through budget, not only budget presentations, but budget deliberations, and we went through a full week of budget presentations. I know that you were absent for a lot of those presentations, and we went through and discussed much of this at that point. And then during the budget deliberations, we did ask all of our folks to cut as much as possible, and they did, and our elected officials and department heads, I think, did their due diligence, and we felt, and I know that you remember, we sat here at the end of those budget deliberations, and you wanted to cut, and so we were like, yes, try to cut some more, and you managed to find one cut out of operations budget. I think it was a vehicle in there. So appreciate that cut. I'm not sure that there's anything more to cut as we've gone through that process already. I think the increases that you mentioned, I just wanted for clarification purposes on the 7 and 8%, those increases. HR, we've been working, as you know, with our HR department, and we've gone through a process where we're looking at levels and kinds to bring parity to everyone. So what we were actually doing is bringing folks up to a level of equity, so we would not have inequity within the organization, and that we approved that on this level to make sure that we weren't paying someone less for the same job as someone else, whether that was a gender issue or whatever. But we just wanted to make sure that we were abiding by all the laws that we needed to, and that we were being fair and equitable in the organization. So I just wanted to clarify that's where those 8 and 7% came from. Commissioner Lachando?
Yes, thank you. Well, I've sort of run through the gamut of emotions both tonight and really over the last week, thinking about this hearing, and frankly, I've had a lot of sleepless nights about it. I hear very sincerely and deeply the concerns out there about especially seniors on fixed incomes and what they're potentially facing, including my own grandmother. So I hear that. I'm also deeply, deeply disappointed in our former elected officials, not only the prior board, but boards before them. I consider it the height of fiscal irresponsibility to take a look at a list of needs and have no plan in place for how to pay for them. It's standard practice for government entities to have a capital improvement plan, 10 to 15-year horizon. And I was shocked to walk in here on January and discover that we had a list of needs totaling almost $300 million worth, but no plan in place for how to pay for them. So as an Ada County resident, a fourth-generation Idahoan, I was really disappointed and frankly angry about that. But here we are. I maybe crazily chose to run for this office to inherit this responsibility. And I am looking at some very critical needs, and I'm just not willing to kick the can down the road to future boards or certainly future residents of Ada County. So I am interested in taking care of some of these. I do have some concerns and questions and maybe some caveats with a couple of the items, but that's where my head is at on the whole.
All right, I guess it's my turn. I'm kind of feeling the same way. I walked into this office, and my background is in business management, and I've been doing that for 27 years. And I was pretty shocked to walk in to see that Ada County, the size that it is, at 300 million budget, 2,000 employees almost, have absolutely no financial plan in place, no financial strategic planning, a capital needs list, which I applaud everyone for putting together the master's facility plan, but with absolutely no intention on ever funding it. And I think as stewards of the taxpayers' money, that is really just inexcusable in my mind, because what happens is the cost of doing nothing is actually very, very expensive. And I know this for a fact in my years of experience. Alone, these two projects alone are costing taxpayers, I think, well over the 4 or 5% that Ms. Mitra Cooper talked to us tonight about. I think it's probably closer to 10%. The minimum, it's costing us about $2 million to do nothing, and that's just not the cost of building. But if we look at other additional risks that we're engaged in by not doing anything, and we're interested in risk mitigation for this county, we're looking at potential lawsuits. We are not living up to our statutory obligation. We are losing out on opportunities to do the right thing, provide the right services, provide the taxpayers the security and the safety that they deserve, and the dignity in the coroner's office that they deserve, and that their tax-paying dollars should go to. And I just feel that this obligation has been put in our lap, and we need to do something. We've gone through and we worked really, really hard with every department head and every elected official to cut the budget wherever we could, and we've gone through that. And Commissioner Visser talked about the 2% merit and 1% COLA. That's just keeping up with inflation. Inflation's running at 2.7, 2.9, and over the years, we have not even been keeping up with inflation. We've been going backwards. In fact, I was really interested in seeing how they were handling, how other elected officials and the boards were handling this over the past decade, just to kind of see what was going on. And I found a report. I'd like to just read an excerpt out of it. And this is from Clerk Chris Rich. And y'all remember Chris Rich, right? I think he was here for 20-some years, and his reputation speaks for itself. And this is what I found, and this was dated July 17th, 2014. Ada County has forgone more taxes than any other district in the state. Of 103 million currently forgone across the state of Idaho, Ada County accounts for 19 million of it, or 19% of the total. This number represents the sum of 7 years of forgone not being taken. And then he goes on to say, however, when you compound, and this is me paraphrasing some of this, however, when you compound the effect of not taking the foregone amount, it exceeds 102.7 million. What people see as tax relief has had a detrimental impact on the county's ongoing operations. He further goes on to state, in order to get the county on fiscal footing, we need to increase ongoing revenues to cover previously incurred ongoing expenses. Levying for the allowed 3%, again, keeping up with inflation, and 1.7 million of foregone puts the county on the right trajectory. And I just would like to reiterate that the amount of doing nothing, as he noted here, is quite expensive, to the tune of $102 million that we don't have today to take care of these needs. In addition to the capital improvement plan not being financed, we also have about $50 million in deferred maintenance. So we are, as Diana would say, somebody's got to be the grown-ups in the room. Forgone is absolutely not anything that any of us want to do, nor plan to do when we took office, but this is what we're faced with. So I think we need to go through and see if there's anything that we can cut on the projects that, again, we have not teed these projects up. We have not prioritized these projects. These projects have been prioritized and teed up by elected officials, not by us. And elected officials, I trust our elected officials, and I trust them to say, we've done our best and we're doing our best, and this is a critical need, or we wouldn't be standing here before you. Our elected officials are elected by the public, so I think when they speak for the public as well. So with that, I'm ready to kind of go through and look at the design costs, starting with the coroner's office. And
Commissioner Kenyon, I have one more note I'd like to share.
Sure. Go for it.
So another piece here that I think that we're all sort of grappling with is the rate of growth and whose responsibility is it to pay for growth. And I think a lot of us who are longtime residents are wondering, is the cost of growth, is growth paying for itself? And I will note that this county has never taken the opportunity to enact impact fees, as many other cities and jurisdictions have done throughout. And if you're not familiar with what an impact fee is, it is a fee that is placed on a developer when a new home is built to be able to recoup some of the costs incurred by growth. Now, that is not something that this county has ever chosen to do, but I'm really pleased to share, while we're not yet in place, that's one of the very first things that this newly constituted board set in motion. Because to the extent possible, if I'm going to sit up here and talk about foregone taxes, I have to be able to look you all in the eye, and I have to be able to look my neighbors in the eye, and certainly my grandmother, who's a feisty lady, and tell her that I have done everything possible to ensure that we are asking growth to pay for itself. I'd also note that this board is taking on really a hard look at what does growth look like and how can we help growth be more fiscally responsible. The way that we are currently developing, and I don't just mean Ada County, I mean all of our cities, is not as fiscally responsible as it could be. It's costing us more in our road capacity and how we look at schools and all the other myriad infrastructure that both we and the cities provide. So also in this budget, we have included a really bold step for the county to stand out and say, we have to do things differently for fiscal responsibility, for quality of life, to ensure that this remains a great place to live. So with that in mind, I'm ready to begin deliberations because I know that in the short time we've been here, by my count, 7 months, but who's counting? Feels pretty long sometimes. I truly can look my friends, my family, my neighbors in the eye and say, we are on the right track, we're doing everything we can to set this county on the right path forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Visser, any questions, comments? Not questions, but
Well,
deliberations.
When I look at our total property taxes that have come into the county, I have some figures from 2014 to 2019. That revenue has increased 44.1%. In comparison, the growth rate for 2 years prior to that was only 22%. So our revenue is definitely is staying ahead of our growth rate. The other thing I see too is I look at our revenue is that our new construction roll of this year being $5,489,547 is the highest it's been in over 10 years. So we are getting some pretty good revenue. There's no doubt about that. And again, I will go discuss a few other things, but where I am on this first one, I'm in favor of it, but I'm not in favor of using foregone taxes to go forward with the coroner's plan.
Well, Commissioner Visser, I do have a question related to that because as Commissioner Kenyon noted, we sat up here during budget deliberations and you were offered the opportunity to go back through the budget and offer any cuts, and I believe you found $65,000 during that process.
Yeah, I was offered that and I only had about 15 minutes to do it. So
No,
since then, I've
We
gone
would've
back-
sat here as long as you
Take as
wanted.
much time as you want.
Well,
I said
being under the
take as,
gun, I did it pretty quickly. Since then, I've gone back in and I've compiled the figures that I have with research, and this is where I'm at.
okay, thank you. I'd like to just fall back a little bit on, in a few comments on what Commissioner Laciando was talking about. Again, we walked into the situation, we didn't create it. And this is not fun for us, but I do want taxpayers out there to know that this board is making an effort to make sure that we're looking at legislation, and we've talked to our assessor, Bob McQuaid. We're all concerned about elderly, rising prices, the growth. We're concerned about people being able to stay in their homes. And this board is actively working with our other elected fellow officials to be able to provide relief for the folks who need it. So we are looking at this holistically. We are looking at our regional plan and putting out an effort to lead in that area so we can help manage growth more effectively. Our planned communities that have cost us a lot of grief and transportation problems. We've tightened up those ordinances, making those really difficult. So I think we're making headway. But again, we've only been here a few months, and we are sitting here with beyond critical problems, beyond critical infrastructure, and we are out of statutory compliance. And I just don't think we have any choice at all but to do the right thing and fund the facilities that we're talking about tonight. I would like to go through and ask either Sheriff Bartlett or Coroner Dottie Owens on the design costs, and Mitra can weigh in as well. The design costs that we have here today, are those design costs? I know that we had experts come in, this was before this board. If you could just speak to these design costs and make sure that there's nothing that we can cut here and what these are gonna cost, or are we already under and it's gonna be more than this? I'd just like you to weigh in because I believe these were ascertained a few years ago. Sure. What's that? Oh, no, just, yeah, I just want to know just for my, yeah.
So the design costs were derived through the master facilities plan process, and how we did go about doing this is we had hired a consulting firm that had, oh, good.
That's okay, fine.
That had experts that worked in the arena of coroners and experts that worked in the arena of sheriff. And after we identified this per 1,000 population need, how much square footage would be needed or how much inmate capacity would be needed, they weighed in on the actual cost of it. And then we have an appendix that runs with the master facilities plan, Appendix B, that actually goes into the details of the cost estimates that goes into the design cost that you have in front of you.
So these costs are accurate today, what we're looking at today?
Correct, they are,
Okay.
they
We
were
haven't
considered.
adjusted for anything? Okay. All right, thank you, appreciate that. Just want to make sure we're dealing with the numbers that we need to be dealing with. All right, any other thoughts, Mr. Visser Laciando?
I do on the design costs. And I've brought this up before, and I don't know if Mitra's considered it, but I know the University of Idaho has an architectural school, and they have taken on projects and done great work at a significant lower cost than architectural firms. Have you taken that into consideration, Mitra?
I'm not sure, is this, okay. This isn't.
Well, this
part
is
of-
to
yeah,
see if
okay,
it's efficient.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, these facilities are fairly sophisticated facilities, and I have been an architecture student to know that it takes you a while to kind of understand the nuances of all these. And especially in sheriff's case, you know, when you are working with 1,000+ inmates currently in the existing jail and trying to add something, you do want somebody that has a fairly substantial experience in planning for these kind of uses, because as I mentioned, it's not a standardized office building that you can take a cookie cutter approach and put offices next to each other and say a manager is 225 square feet of space, or it's not that simple. because of the existing operational challenges that you would have.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Well, I am going to go back to, I am placing my faith and trust in our fellow elected officials and in this process. And they have been part of the transformation board. They've been part of the master facility plan. We've gone through our budgets. We've gone through budget cuts, deliberations, presentations. We've heard here tonight testimony. These are critical needs. I think the cost of not approving this and taking the necessary foregone would cost us 10 times more in the long run, as past clerk Chris Rich has mentioned. That 7 years cost the county $103 million if they would have taken what they needed to take at the time. So that's a pretty hefty price to pay. So I am going to start it out by saying I'm willing to take the necessary foregone to get these two projects done this year. The second driver's license location, I'd be up for debate on that one. I don't think anybody's going to be, I mean, an hour is an hour wait, but it's not like what we're dealing with as critical as the sheriff's office. It's inconvenient, but the issues that we're dealing with at the coroner's office and the sheriff's office are life critical.
Well, I came here this evening with an open mind, but not entirely convinced we need to take the full amount. And there's two projects that I really want to talk through. So let's start with the second driver's license location. I think my lucky stars every day that I'm not in your shoes. And maybe I should actually come out and sit in your shoes, because I think it would be a really challenging environment. That being said, one of the things that I think is really critical for us is to think about how we can collaborate as a county. And by nature, county government is siloed. We have a board of commissioners that oversees 12 departments, and then we have 6 elected offices. But for the average Ada County resident, they don't know and they don't care that the assessor manages motor vehicle registration and that the sheriff manages driver's licenses. It's all Ada County to them. So on the money for the second driver's license location, I actually would be supportive of that one if we want to start off that way, because I do see the need. I do feel it is critical, but with the caveat that we need to put together a project management team over the next several weeks and months to look at being effective and efficient with taxpayer dollars and providing the best customer service possible, and looking at co-locating a motor vehicle registration office with a second driver's license location. So that would be my first offer. My second one being, I appreciate all the work that has been done by our sheriff's office. I truly think that we have the best sheriff and the best sheriff's office in the state of Idaho. And no offense to all those other sheriffs, who I'm sure are all
Trying to get in.
yes, they're all lovely in their own ways. I have been so appreciative, and if you heard me during the campaign, you know that I said, I can't look people in the eyes and advocate for a jail expansion until I know that we have done everything possible to ensure that the people who need to be in jail are there and the people who don't need to be in jail aren't. And I knew Sheriff Bartlett before taking this office. I've gotten to know him even better, and I have supreme confidence in him and his team. The part that has me concerned is the state's role. And I am worried about developing new space and starting that process before seeing what the legislature does this year. I'm kind of the mindset that nature abhors a vacuum. And if we have space, either we or other entities will find a way to fill it. So I may be convinced there, but of all of the elements, I'm supportive of design costs for the coroner's office. I'm supportive of the acquisition of property, and I'm supportive of the second driver's license location. I want to further talk out the jail pod design costs.
Commissioner Visser?
Okay, I'll begin by weighing in on the design costs for the jail pod. I believe that we need to further explore all other options. And when I served, and I'm still on the Transformation Board, I didn't think it was done to that extent. I thought it came in with one option and that was pushed and it went forth. I think we need to further explore and see what our legislature can do for us with alternate sentencing time, for the rate of bonds, for expanding ankle monitoring, for examining other jurisdictions and what they're using, for taking a closer look at work release, because right now we have a community work release center that's only at half capacity. Also, we have facilities out there that are helping with mental health services. And if we commit more to them, what part of our jail population will go down? I think we have partnerships that we need to pursue. I also believe that we need to take a better look and get on top of what's going on with the IDOC population being in the jail and Ada County taxpayers subsidizing the state. That is not good stewardship in handling our money. As for the acquisition of the real property for expansion of the Ada County Jail, I don't believe that the price will only get higher. In fact, history says otherwise. In 2006, an Oregon company bought the property at the northeast corner of Eagle Road and Fairview to develop a mall. Their purchase price was $75 million, and their sign said that the mall was going to be opening in 2008. However, a recession started in 2008 and carried over, and that company sold the property that they had purchased for $75 million at a bankruptcy sale for $15 million, recognizing the loss of over $60 million. That's something we have to take into consideration. I also felt that we did not take a good look at building on the parking lots. If you look at the maps that we saw earlier, there are large parking lots out there that are only one level, and two-level parking lots are doable. Plus, it's doable putting a facility on top of an existing parking lot, leaving the base level, and having pod, jail, cells, whatever going up. That would save $1 million right off the bat. As for the second driver's license location, the need is definitely there, but I have a big problem with maintaining the location at Benjamin. I think that location is dysfunctional. I think the traffic is bad there, even on a slow day. It's not easy to get in and out of that facility because you have a two-lane road on Benjamin. I would propose closing that location, looking into 2 new locations, and hopefully down the road 4, where the locations were selected by demographic or geographic sites. In addition, over the last year, I learned that several developers, both commercial and residential developers, have donated bare land within their developments because they get a significant write-off. Land has been given by developers to schools, to parks and recreation, and they are exploring other opportunities. I welcome the chance to contact these developers and see if we could get a donation from them, a significant write-off that's available to them because they are donating to a government entity. Thank you.
Commissioner Visser. Commissioner Lachando, any further comments?
Yes, Commissioner Visser, I certainly would love to have 4 driver's license locations. Have you explored the fiscal impact of what that would take?
Well, I'm going to look into it by checking with the developers to see if we can have some opportunities. The other thing what I'd like to explore is we know that in our inventory, Ada County has a significant amount of real property holdings. I think we should take a look at those and see if we can capitalize on any of those. Or
Propose these at the Transformation Board?
this one was already done. It was done when I got there. Yeah, there was no consideration of other opportunities. It was, we need one new one, and that was it.
All right, well, I'm going to weigh in. I don't claim to be a design expert, a real estate expert, or a building expert. So I'm not going to weigh in that I think this board should engage in those activities. I think that we hire professionals to do that, and we trust our elected officials in that capacity. Having said that, the projects that are before us tonight are on the design, which doesn't mean that the design is going to be exactly as it was presented a couple of years ago. Things have changed, and that's why the prices, again, have gone up, because we didn't take care of this when we should have. And so this gives us an opportunity to go back in and say, are these the right designs? Is this the right place? Is this the right location? So every objective that you just raised, that's exactly what we're proposing to do here tonight. And if we don't do this, we'll never get anything done. We'll never get anything built. This is just a first step in really making sure and ascertaining whether we have the right facility designs and the right location. Commenting on Commissioner Laciando's thoughts on the design cost pod E and Ada County subsidizing the state. I'm troubled by that. I really appreciate Sheriff Bartlett's efforts with the new director, Director Tewalt, and they've engaged in numerous conversations, and it looks like they're building a really good, strong partnership and a relationship, and I have faith that that will continue. However, I would like to see some leverage possibly put on the state to work a little bit faster and to have a transition center here locally built before it's built in another county. I'm not sure how to do that. My only concern, normally I would want to negotiate, and I would say let's put in half the money this year and negotiate with the state that we'll put in the other half that we need if they'll work with us on a plan. However, I'm very, very concerned that the ability for this county and other counties or states to take Forgone may, at the legislative session next year, go away. And if we don't do it now, we may not have another opportunity. And I think that's a reality that we need to face. So as much as I'd like to use that as leverage, we may not have any leverage next year. We may not have any ability at all to get any of this done. And so I'm of the mind, if we're going to do it, let's rip the Band-Aid off and let's do it and do it right.
So, Madam Chair, last year, Commissioner Tibbs made that same comment that Forgone is going to be taken away. So I did some good research on Forgone, its legislative history. It was created in 1996. So it has been on the boards for 23 years. And after checking with the Legislative Services Office, there is no record of any legislation proposed at any time to take away one's foregone balance. In fact, the language that came about in 2019 that allows an entity to disclaim a foregone amount, that is saying this year we decided to take 2% and we forego 1%, we can disclaim that, but only for that year. You cannot disclaim any amount in the past. So the statute that it's found in has been amended 19 times. And not in any of those amendments was it ever discussed that Forgone would be taken away.
Thank you for your
So it appears to
comments.
be a rumor.
Thank you. Commissioner Laciando? Ball's back in your court.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I am also, trying to predict what the Idaho legislature is going to do is probably a fool's errand. So I am really thinking more about putting ourselves in a position to create a solid plan with the state in the next year. But while doing that, setting aside money for the acquisition of real property. So I'm kind of trying to acknowledge the need to grow while acknowledging that I think we have some more work to do on a new jail pod and that conversation with the state. Doesn't mean I don't want to support getting it done. I do. I feel like it's pretty ambiguous to me right now.
I agree. I do think, though, that we're faced with a situation where it's our statutory obligation to provide the services that we need to provide, and we're running the risk of possibly being sued every day, and that could cost the taxpayers a lot more money, and we would still need to build additional jail capacity. So that's a huge risk I'm not willing to take. I'm not willing to roll those dice and hope to God nobody, looks our direction and sees that we didn't pass inspection and sees that we're out of statutory compliance and that we are putting our citizens at risk, I think. So I'm not willing to really negotiate on that. I'm gonna stand firm. This is what we need to do. We've needed to do it for years, and we can't wait anymore. And as much as this is probably not a popular thing to do, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do.
I would have to take issue with your statement on not meeting the statutory obligations. I think for the most part, even our sheriff has told us how good our jail is. He gets survey responses from inmates that say how good it is. I know that the Eagle Police Department did an outstanding job in improving safety out there when they changed their program out there. I don't see or I'm not aware of any history, and I would need that type of evidence to accept that statement that we're under threat of a lawsuit. If it's happened throughout the state and there's been a significant payout, that's another matter, but I'm not aware of any.
Well, the fact that we did not pass inspection for the first time is a red flag. The fact that you saw people laying in cots on the floor is something that the ACLU would not be too pleased about. So I think we're opening ourselves up for risk.
That's true. The ACLU does get involved in these matters, and in fact, when consent decrees are brought about, it's not unusual to see the consent decree called a civil rights consent decree. And a full explanation of what a consent decree is, that's why I find it troubling that a sheriff would be so opposed to it. A consent decree is not a federal judge giving a one-sided opinion saying you must do this and I'm taking over your jail. A consent decree is when the ACLU and the jail operator, i.e. the sheriff, get together and agree and consent upon their agreement. They've got a settlement, they've got an agreement. But what makes a consent decree different is it has the bite of enforcement by the court. So if one of the parties doesn't do what they're obligated to do, the court can step in, they can be notified of what's going on, and they can decide what's going on. But a consent decree, it's hard to see that it's bad when the sheriff himself can negotiate in that settlement.
I would have to disagree. Certainly, it sounds great to come together with an agreement that's court enforced, but I think that we would much prefer, as a county, to plan and prepare for the needs of the future without having the federal government be involved in that conversation.
I would agree, and I think it's unfortunate that you missed the meeting that we had where Sheriff Donahue came over and talked to us about his experience, his personal experience, and what he's going through in Canyon County. And it's pretty tough for them over there, and I would never want to put this county in that same position, ever.
I am aware, though, that the prior sheriff, who I knew and worked on a case or two with, Chris Smith, said that when he was informed by the action by the ACLU that he went and took a personal tour of his own jail, and his words were, "I had no idea it was this deplorable."
All right, back to the issue at hand. I'm going to keep you here all night. All right, design for the cost of the coroner. Ready to make a...
I'm going to look to our legal counsel. Can we take these up separately?
Can we? Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's take them up separately.
Okay. Madam Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion to support the use of Forgone for design costs associated with the new county coroner's office.
Okay, I'll need a second. All right, we're not going to get a second from Commissioner Visser. I'll second that. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, the motion carries. All right.
And I do voice a nay only because foregone money is being used for this. I recognize the need and I support it 100%. I believe it can fit within our budget.
Okay, moving on to, let's take the property purchase.
Madam Chair, I move to support the use of Forgone for acquisition of real property for the expansion of the Ada County Jail
Okay,
and indoor public safety facilities.
all right, I'll need a second on that. Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, the ayes have it. Motion carries. All right, I'll take up second driver's license location.
I'll make a motion. Madam Chair, I move to support the use of Forgone to fund a second driver's license location for the Ada County Sheriff's Office with the caveat that over the next weeks and months, I expect the Sheriff's Office, the Assessor's Office, together with some project management teams, to look at how we can co-locate and collaborate as a county.
Okay, I'll need a second on that. Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay.
I'll abstain on this.
Okay, the ayes have it. Motion carries. All right, design cost on the Pod E.
I just don't think I'm there at this time.
Are you halfway there?
I am not.
A quarter of the way there? Are you there at all?
I'm ready for a nap, but
No, this is real. I think this is so important. I really do. I just think this is risk mitigation. It is good business practice. And for $24.27 of what this would cost, Ada County taxpayers, I believe if Ada County taxpayers could weigh in right now, they would say absolutely worth the $24 a year to keep our streets safe, to keep us out of harm's way, and to keep us out of a lawsuit. It's a small price to pay for what could happen if we don't. And I'm not willing to take that risk.
I hear you. I do think over the next year, we're going to have the opportunity to have additional conversations with the state of Idaho, and I think we lose leverage by getting started on design without having had those conversations. So I am not supportive of doing that part at this time.
And I second that motion.
Wasn't a motion yet. Yet. What if we did half this year with going back and taking up the second half next year? as a
I'm going to look
possibility?
to legal counsel if we are able to do
Are we
that.
able to do that, to try to fund 50% of it, at least put that in the bank this year, and then go for the other 50% if the state will come along and work with us on a strategic plan, that we could then next year look at the other 50%?
We can look at this year. Next year is another.
Yeah, yeah.
Kathleen, I'm looking at you in terms of budgeting wise, the feasibility of that. Yes, please.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I would just say that we certainly can budget that, but I don't know if you will be able to get a contract for that dollar amount that will get you anywhere. So in order to let that contract, if it's $2 million and we've only budgeted $1.5 million, you won't be able to let the contract, so.
Will we be able to, we don't have a construction fund for the jail, so.
No, we do not.
What would we be able to do in terms of holding on to those dollars year to year?
I don't know that you could technically do that.
Okay. We can make a mental note, but we don't have a place to park it.
Again.
Right, and I'm sorry, but next year you couldn't create a construction fund anyway. It has to be in the odd numbered year. Next year will be 2020, so we don't even have that availability to create anything if we even had any money to set aside.
Yeah. Yes.
Don't look at the contract issue at this point. It's whether or not you want to take foregone in any amount for a specific project.
Okay.
Okay.
Focus on that.
Okay.
But what if it is, if this design project has received an estimate at this number, i.e. 100%, and you go at it halfway, then we have that thing hanging over our head is that we can't enter into a 2-year contract, right?
Yeah.
I believe too, the numbers, the 10% were like 2 million, if that helps, instead of 3. 15% would be through 3 million.
10% is how
10%
much?
would be something around 2.
Can you give us those numbers? Anybody?
Looking at somebody else's paperwork. 2,075,800.
And that would probably drop the annual cost to taxpayers down under $20 a year, just under.
Yeah, because it's about $4 a million.
So just under, okay.
So we'd be looking at a total foregone of about 4.6 or,
Somebody do the math.
yeah.
Well, yeah, $1.1 million. And subtract $1.1 million off that. So yeah, 4.6.
So what would be the total request then?
I need my calculator.
Give this lady a calculator.
I think Heather's doing the math over here.
Don't let me do math.
Oh, no, it looked like you were. Well, my calculator's dead. Anybody have a calculator? So we need to, yeah, change the 3,113,700 to,
So we're asking for originally how much? 5?
5.563.
And what was 5.563 what? And $93. And 93? Okay. 5563093. And I'm going to take out the 3,113,700. And I'm going to add in 2,075,800. So if this is right, 4,525,193.
Can you repeat that again? 4,000,000.
4,525,193.
83.
Okay.
And that would get us at 10% for design costs, okay?
Okay.
And that would bring down the annual amount to around, what, $19?
Yeah, more than likely,
Under
yeah.
20. All right, that's a Big Mac and a couple of fries.
I can get on board with that. I
Can
think
you?
that gives us
Okay.
some leverage. I also think there's an opportunity to squeeze some things during the course of the next year.
It keeps
to-
us on track and going. It does. It holds our feet to the fire as a board and keeps us going in the right direction. And an incentive to keep pushing.
So
IDOC.
what's the number then? If I, Kathleen, if I make a motion to support that number, would you read that for me again? Or Mitra?
It's here,
2,075,800.
Okay, so Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and move to support the use of Forgone for design costs associated with a new jail pod at $2,075,800.
All right, I'll second that. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, the ayes have it. The motion carries. Any further discussion from the board? All right, hearing none, the meeting is adjourned, and we thank you all very much for your patience and support tonight in this process.